Well, hi, hello, and welcome to this special edition webinar, Actual Tech Media's Super Summit. Today's topic is the ransomware spectrum, securing people, technology, and data. So to kick us off here, let me just pause and take a moment to tell you a bit more about what makes this day so very special, or super, if you will. Today, we have gathered together top industry experts from Veeam, Rapid7, Rubrik, Palo Alto Networks, Metallica, Commvault Venture, and Zerto, who are all here today to talk to you about the solutions and strategies that will empower all of you to build, to enhance, maybe to fortify your ransomware preparedness planning across the entire spectrum of awareness here. Now, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again today. It is so important not to confuse ubiquity with safety. Just because we talk about this stuff a lot, just because we talk about ransomware, we're hearing about it more, does not mean that we are safe, that we are prepared. It is more important than ever to stay on top of these growing and evolving trends and threats. So these sessions today are going to be short, they're going to be punchy, they're going to be jam-packed with information. We will have experts here with us on live chat throughout the day answering questions. So that's innovative presentations, expert keynote, engaging discussions, and all the ransomware questions, trends, tips, strategies, and solutions that you need to revise, to revamp, and most of all, to supercharge your organization's ransomware protection, recovery, and training strategies. All the good stuff right in one place. All right, now in order for you to get the most out of your day today, I want to cover just a few housekeeping things. Now, we have a couple of prizes I'm going to tell you about in just a moment, but let's take a look at what's up on the screen for you here. I want to draw your attention on over to the questions box in your webinar control panel. If you haven't already said hi, there is a huge audience out there today. So give a hi, a hello, a happy spring to everyone out there who has joined in this important conversation. Now, most of all, we want this to be an informative and interactive event for you, which means that we want to see those technical questions. So throughout today's Super Summit, we hope you will get engaged. Be sure to ask all the questions you have about ransomware solutions and strategies that we're going to be exploring together. All right, now keeping things moving, I do actually want to take a quick pause today as we're chatting about that questions area. Now, because we've got a lot to cover, we are going to keep these sessions pretty short and sweet. So we're going to keep a lot of the discussion to live chat today, to that questions window today. So please keep those comments coming in. And again, questions, comments, thoughts, thought-provoking ideas, whatever you want to share with us, we want to hear that. Keep those coming in. And the awesome humans from Veeam, Rapid7, Rubrik, Palo Alto Networks, Metallica, Commvault Venture, and Zerto will be here with us on live chat, as well as following up over email to any questions that we don't get to. The last thing I want to point out about that questions tab is that you do have any technical issues that come up today, knock on wood, of course, that questions window is going to be, think of it as your bat signal to the actual tech media team. So you can give your browser a quick refresh. That's probably going to fix any of the little issues that come up along the way. But if that doesn't work, send up that bat signal, post in the questions section, and let the actual tech media team know that you're having a little trouble, and we will be there to help you out. All right, last two things on your audience console. One is that Twitter button. I do want to make sure that you're aware of that. Now, when you hear something exciting, interesting, brain-tingly, lighty-uppy on the Super Summit today, be sure to share it with your friends. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console. The hashtag for today's Super Summit will automatically be added to your post. And our last stop on our guided tour, I do want to make sure that you are aware of the handouts tab. You're going to find some fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info-packed collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So click around in that handout section and be sure to download some of those awesome resources to save for later. Now, I mentioned this at the top, but if I haven't met you already, my name is Jess Steinbuck. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be one of your super moderators on this Super Summit. My other super fellow moderators, Scott Becker and David Davis, will be joining us on live chat as well. Now, I said this a little bit earlier. Let's come back around to it. It is not just awesome content that we are giving away today. We have some wonderful and super, I'm going to try to stop saying super. I feel like I've said it a lot, but we have some super prizes for you all. Yeah, it just necessitates it in this case. So we're going to give away 1 of 3 Apple HomePods, 1 of 4 Acer gaming laptops, and 1 of 4 Simply Safe outdoor security systems. And that's not even including the $300 Amazon gift cards that we will be giving away every 30 minutes. So stay tuned for that. Now, I do want to remind you all that you do need to be here live in attendance at the Super Summit, but hey, who wouldn't want to be here live with us, right? So you do need to be here and live in order to qualify to win. You also do need to meet all of the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, you can find the full T's and C's linked for you in the handouts tab. So just head on over there. All right, now I mentioned a little bit earlier how much we like getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much, we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So on the Super Summit today, we will be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the teams are going to review all the questions asked after we wrap, which means that even if your question does not get read out during a live session, there is still a chance to win. So keep those questions coming. As I said, we're going to keep things moving, keep the pace pretty quick today. So we won't be pausing as much for live Q&A, but that doesn't mean that those live chat questions are not getting heard, seen, answered, and also entered to win that best question. So please do keep those coming. Now, we're going to follow up with all the winners today from our grand prizes, from our best question after we wrap. And there's a couple of notes here about eligibility. Again, the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab. I do want to remind you all that all grand prize winners are required to submit an IRS form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. All right, now if you're a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up with you about your prize win, and we will get that rolling. All right, well, we are pretty happy to be chatting with you live here today, and we want to share that fun with the rest of our team, with the rest of our community. We want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and find Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. And if you're looking for more awesome content, even more awesome content than we have here at the Super Summit today, I know there's going to be a lot already. Be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. So many good resources for you there, and on-demand webinars on just about anything you can imagine. So please do go and check that out after we wrap. Okay, one last fun way to win a prize here today is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in your handouts tab. You will also get automatically redirected at the end of our webinar as well. Now, I do want to promise you, we are not going to spam your friends and your coworkers. We will send them an invitation to a list of upcoming events, and if they don't respond, they get one more reminder from us. That's it. And then both you and your coworker could win a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month, so get those referrals in now. All right, one last thing, and this is going out to the decision makers out there. This is a really cool way to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. So here's how it's going to work. All you need to do is click on the link that is in your handouts tab and fill out the quick application. That application allows the Actual Tech Media crew to match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your specific needs. There will also be some fun opportunities that you can choose to join in or not, things like surveys, tests for any new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win some extra prizes. You can chat with some great people, learn about the hottest new trends in technology. So be sure to apply, or hey, if you don't think you're the decision maker, hopefully you know if you're the decision maker or not, but if you don't think you are, send that link, send that application to someone on your team who you think should be a part of that conversation. Whew, all right, well, we've covered a lot of really important things already. I think it's time we get this Super Summit rolling. And to kick us off today, we will be chatting with the one and only Lindsay Kay. Now, some of you might remember from the Mega Summit that we did a few months ago on the 5 NIST ransomware pillars. And so you know that we are very lucky to have Lindsay back with us today to start out our discussion. So let's get Lindsay on out here with me. Well, hey, Lindsay, welcome back. It's so great to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me today. I'm excited.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's an exciting topic. We have a lot to cover. And, just thinking about the whole reason we're here today and the ransomware spectrum, this is a really big topic. There's a lot to cover here. And I think sometimes it can feel big and overwhelming. And it's hard to know where to jump in. And one great way to do that is to, bring out some specifics, maybe look at some use cases and kind of walk through what we can learn from them. And I understand that that's what you've got ready for us today.
Yeah, I do. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit about it.
All right. Well, I can't wait to hear more. So Lindsay, take it away.
Awesome. So hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Kay, and I'm Senior Director of the Advanced Reversing Malware Operations and Reconnaissance Team for Insight Group Recorded Future. So I run the technical arm of our threat intelligence team, and my technical specialty is in malware analysis and reverse engineering. So today I want to talk with you about how people, technology, and data can come together to mitigate the threat of ransomware. The case study I'm going to use is the recent ransomware attack in which ESXi-ARG's ransomware was deployed to thousands of internet-accessible ESXi servers in early February, demonstrating what can happen when a threat actor takes advantage of a series of opportunities to execute a ransomware attack. So I often like to look at the cybercriminal ecosystem from a business perspective, in which financial gain is driven by identifying the most effective opportunity to do so. However, while we often talk about the opportunism associated with ransomware threat actors, in the case of the recent ESXi-ARG's attack, we truly got the chance to observe it on several levels. First, the targets themselves, ESXi servers, present a viable opportunity for victimization by a threat actor for a couple of reasons. Many organizations have moved towards virtualizing their infrastructure in recent years, and this, combined with the nascent offerings for antivirus for ESXi, and the difficulty in securing these types of systems certainly seems attractive to a threat actor. This means that if a threat actor is able to gain access to an ESXi server, it's likely that there will be relatively few barriers in their way that require significant effort to overcome. In the case of the ESXi-ARG's attack, what we saw was the threat actor targeted many servers that were internet accessible, likely using Shodan and another similar openly available service to identify them. So what we have is an appealing target that takes a lower level of effort to victimize than a traditional Windows environment, and identification of vulnerable systems is also relatively easy and able to be done using openly available tools. Next, as part of the ESXi-ARG's attacks, we saw relatively simple tools used, but more importantly, the tools used in the attack appeared to be heavily derived from existing ones and those that had previously been published by other researchers. Ultimately, none of these were entirely new TTPs, starting with a 2-year-old vulnerability used as a compromisation vector. The backdoor script used was the same one identified and published on by researchers at Juniper 3 months prior, and the ransomware itself appeared to be based on Babook's leaked source code with some minor modifications. The opportunity the threat actor took advantage from here is being able to cobble together existing tools to execute the attack. While some technical knowledge is certainly needed to do so, it is substantially less than creating these tools from scratch or finding and using a zero-day vulnerability. So I often talk about how threat actors read the reporting we put out just like other researchers, and they have access to openly available tools as well. And this provides a concrete example of how these tools can be used to conduct a successful attack. Finally, what stands out about this attack is the low level of sophistication it took to execute, and the opportunity it highlights for other aspiring threat actors looking for financial gain. It serves as a proof of concept of what can be accomplished using openly available existing tools on the right type of target. So now we have a concrete example of the manifestation of opportunism in ransomware attacks. Let's move on to talking about how we can combat it as defenders. So we can prioritize our people and technology to evaluate the right data and create our own opportunities to defend against these attacks. There are a couple of key components of the ESXi-ARG's attacks that provide great examples to talk through today. First, the initial access vector, a known critical vulnerability in the SLP service for ESXi that was patched in February 2021. This is a great example of why having a detailed list of systems that make up our organization's infrastructure is critical, and keeping it up to date as new infrastructure is added or dispensed of is an important asset. It's well known that patching vulnerabilities, especially critical ones, is also extremely important, but the first step is knowing exactly what systems we have, who has access to them, and ensuring the list is up to date. While it's certainly complicated to define the correct update frequency for every organization, I want to underscore that this is a step that can be undertaken by almost any organization and does not require a large IT staff or threat intelligence team to do so. The second layer here is assessing the configuration and potentially misconfiguration of these systems wherever possible. With the ESXi attacks, while we don't know for sure that the victimized servers were misconfigured, the risks of making them internet accessible and enabling services like SLP are evident. As defenders, after creating our list of infrastructure in our organizations, identifying any systems that might be high risk is a good next step. High risk will mean different things for different people, but a few examples are internet-facing systems storing critical information, older systems that can't be patched due to software or hardware compatibility issues, or systems that have open ports or services turned on that are known for presenting a risk of exploitation. At this point, it is certainly worth assessing whether these systems are configured in the way you expect them to be. A few questions I would suggest answering could be, who has access to the system? And are there any users who don't need this access? Are the enabled services and open ports really needed? And does the system need access to the internet at all? Can we reduce either? In the event we can't patch a system for some critical security issue, what plan can we implement to monitor it, and what additional considerations should we take into account regarding its security? And then, wherever possible, testing these assumptions. For example, while we may think that only certain services are enabled and ports are open, confirming that our systems are configured as we expect is critical. According to recent research, misconfiguration issues are a leading cause of breaches, as well as top threat to cloud infrastructure. While every organization won't have the resources and expertise to test the configuration of all of their systems, identifying the highest risk ones and testing them is a smaller task to take on. Next, as I mentioned, the ESXi attacks largely used existing tools, particularly the backdoor and the ransomware itself. As defenders, we know it's important to monitor what tools are being released in open source or which are published on by threat researchers, but this is not a simple undertaking and requires having some resources available. But I want to underscore that some aspect of staying aware of the latest threats can be done by almost every organization. There are utilities that can make it easier, such as a threat intelligence platform or having someone on staff with threat intelligence analysis experience, but prioritization of what matters is critical regardless of the size of the team or other resources at your disposal. Priorities can be determined based on a variety of factors, but the important thing is establishing them and using them to determine things like what gets patched first, hunting packages for emerging malware that should be implemented, or if you do threat hunting, which types of adversaries are key. Finally, what we learned from the ESXi attacks is how simple it can be for a threat actor to conduct an impactful ransomware attack and why we need to care and take action. What I want to underscore is that while combating something like ESXi ransomware, especially if deployed by a sophisticated threat actor, is not an easy problem to solve, there are steps like those I described above that we can take to make it more challenging for our organization to be victimized by ransomware actors. But how do we convince our management that doing so is not an insurmountable task or too hard to do without a lot of expensive resources or just not even worth the time? Here are my suggestions. Doing even a little bit is better than doing absolutely nothing at all. There are several smaller undertakings that don't require significant resources and that are effective to increase the security of our organization. A few of these include identifying and adjusting automated indicator feeds for C2 servers or malicious hashes, implementing and using two-factor authentication, ensuring users have strong passwords, and pruning accounts as employees leave or roles change. You can certainly make the argument that these basic cybersecurity practices are relatively low effort to implement, but provide substantial benefit, minimizing initial access-related threats such as password reuse or credential theft. Next, it's important to have some kind of plan on what your organization will do in the event of a ransomware attack. Ideally, this includes establishing the list of infrastructure the organization has, ideally as part of a disaster recovery plan and incident response plan in the case that the ransomware attack does occur is a great idea. The benefit of doing so is that there is documentation to work from, many difficult decisions have been thought through, and the focus can be on following the plan. Finally, we all know that the earlier a ransomware attack can be stopped, the less damage can be done, and the lower the cost of recovery. As a result, it's critical to start with mitigating initial access vectors such as phishing, exploitation, or as I discussed previously, the risks created by misconfigured infrastructure. Here, some defenses that might prove valuable to implement include basic phishing mitigations, assessing the configurations of internet-facing infrastructure, and spending time to patch systems in accordance with your priority list. And with that, I've appreciated the chance to talk through some of the lessons learned from the recent ESXi attacks and give you some ideas of what can be done to mitigate similar issues in the future, even if your organization does not have a wealth of resources to do so. Thank you so much. And I understand we have a lot to kind of get through, so I'm going to hand it back over to Jess.
We do. Thank you so much, Lindsay. That was such an interesting chat and a great way to start our day. I love both getting into the specifics a real world example, and also how different organizations can approach some of these conversations and these decisions. Really, really just a great way to start our conversation today, because we are talking about all of the above, about people, about technology, and all of the various things that come into our ransomware planning. So as I said, thank you very much. And as you said, we have a lot to cover. So we're going to keep things rolling and keep moving with the Super Summit. Let's get going. Thanks again, Lindsay.
Sure thing.
Okay, well, you can see we've got a poll up for all of you now. Now you get to answer the questions after you've been asking Lindsay some great questions. So what we're looking for is, what is your time frame? What are the timelines you have in mind? Now the question says for adding new or updating existing IT solutions. Obviously what we're talking about here is ransomware preparedness. So it's maybe not necessarily one specific thing. Maybe it's an approach or an adjustment to your strategy. Maybe it is some new vendors or solutions. So all of the above. Are you looking to make these revisions, enhancements, blow everything up and start from scratch kind of a deal? And how soon are you looking to make those changes? So just to let you know, what I'm seeing here is a pretty even split between all four of these options. And that's great, because this is a really wide spectrum, not to use our title here again. But we are talking about a big spectrum, which means there's going to be a spectrum of answers and approaches and how fast people are looking to move. So thank you to all of you who took some time to answer that poll. It is much appreciated. But I think it's time that we keep rolling into our presentations. And up next, I am so excited to introduce you to our very first expert presenter in today's Super Summit. And we are definitely starting out on a high note, because up next we get to chat with the Veeam team. So Chris Hoff, Security Marketing Manager at Veeam. Let's get Chris on out here with me. All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here with you.
I'm pretty excited to have you here to kick off the Super Summit. And one of the things that I love is we're actually kind of starting from the end at the beginning here, because you're going to talk to us a little bit more about recovery today. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Recovery, it is the last step, but it's one that's often overlooked.
Yeah, that's right. Well, okay, I think that's a great place to start, with the overlooked stage. So take it away, Chris.
Awesome, thanks. So according to our research, 85% of organizations admitted to having a cyber incident or a ransomware incident in 2022. And that's probably not surprising. But did you know that of the companies who chose to pay the ransom, only about a third weren't able to actually get their data back? So they paid the ransom and got nothing, which, let's face it, we're talking about cyber criminals here, so it shouldn't be much of a shock. The most concerning thing is that only 19% of those companies that were attacked were able to recover their data without paying a ransom. Now, every one of these companies had some form of disaster recovery plan, but they all fell short, and mostly because their existing plans weren't designed to function at the scale of a ransomware attack. And that's why I like to think about it as, backing up your data is easy. Recovering that data is the hard part. You see, ransomware is the worst kind of disaster, because unlike a fire or a tornado, things that we normally think of as disasters, you have a third party who is actively working against you to stop you from doing anything but pay that ransom. Your goal, obviously, is to be part of that 19% who don't have to pay the ransom, because you're confident in your recovery. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to get there. I'm going to focus on the recovery slice of the security stack, and some of the best practices that we've found that help organizations get back into production faster and without any kind of data loss. Now, there's a lot of noise when it comes to IT and security, a lot of capabilities that are confusing, and it actually, in my opinion, makes you less secure, and it makes your life harder. In the case of recovering from a cyber event, if you can't recover your data, nothing else really matters. you're going to have a lot of challenges when you're hit with ransomware, and it's going to require us to focus on some capabilities that you need to protect your data and get it back into production. Now, there's a lot that can be done, but for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on these 5 items. To be successful at recovery, you need to have the ability to set the right recovery options for your applications. Fairly obvious to say, but surprisingly hard. You have to protect your backups with immutable layers of security, and you need to have what I like to call data mobility so that you can deal with the worst case scenario. Having complete visibility into your environment allows you to make sure that everything is running correctly and nobody's tampering with your data. And finally, rounding that out, the ability to automate and orchestrate those mundane tasks are going to simplify those day 2 operations and give you the confidence that you need when an attack happens, you're ready. So let's take a closer look at these. Some would say that having options for recovery is a bad thing. I disagree. If you're like most companies, you have hundreds, if not thousands of applications and terabytes of structured and unstructured data that all have different SLAs. And you probably know which applications you need to bring up first in a crisis. A ransomware incident can get messy, and postmortems from the last 10 years of attacks have shown us that being locked into a single or proprietary recovery process isn't good enough when it comes to recovering all these various applications. Now, the reason that this is important is because most organizations have designed their recovery solutions in ways that were working before ransomware, right? Back in I'll call it the good old days when we were only recovering 3 to 5% of our data annually, right? Your hard drive crashed, you deleted a file accidentally, that type of thing. Ransomware changed all that because we're now talking about the possibility that 100% of your production data could be encrypted or destroyed at any time. You need the ability to match your recovery to the application. For instance, you can probably think of applications that can't afford any downtime. Those should be given the resources to recover instantly, right? Straight from the backup repositories without even having to wait for a recovery process to run. We've seen incidents where storage snapshots or replicas of the data was the fastest way to get back online, right? It was faster than what I'll call traditional recovery. And it's just something that we need to account for in our disaster recovery plans. Let me give you an example. There's a company up here in the Northeast where I'm based that identified a ransomware attack that impacted over 1,700 virtual machines and well over 600 terabytes of data. Not only were they able to recover from their backups, but they were also able to use their immutable storage snapshots, which allowed them to recover 4 times faster than just using the backups alone. And the result was that they were able to get back into production in just 6 days. Otherwise, it would have taken them well over a month to get back into production. So the point is that having these options is going to save you time and make sure that you can get back into production faster. Now, immutability has gone from what I think of as a nice to have feature to a requirement to protect against evolving threats. Most companies actually struggle to protect all their data. They feel like they have to make trade-offs between security and performance and how that all meets the needs of the business. These trade-offs are usually driven by hardware limitations or they're forced to decide which data can be immutable and which isn't, and how fast that application needs to be brought back up online. In some cases, this actually leads to a lack of visibility, which means that they can't say for sure which data is protected versus not. At Veeam, we talk a lot about the 3-2-1 rule, where you have 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media, one of which is air-gapped or immutable. Well, I want to expand that so that we have immutability at every layer of our storage, right? We're talking about having immutability where, in our primary storage, so that those backups that are critical are protected into our secondary storage or our offsite storage, as well as into the cloud, so that no matter what happens, no matter how we're attacked, we can have a protected copy of data to recover from. Now, the 3-2-1 rule is good as a best practice, but it can still fall short if you lose access to the server that controls your backups. And that's something that I think needs more attention. Because did you know that 68% of ransomware attacks targeted the backup infrastructure and with a goal of giving the victims no other choice but to pay the ransom? And little sneak peek, I think from our ransomware survey that's coming out in May, that number is actually going up. The point is that the bad actors, as I said before, are doing everything they possibly can to make sure that your only option is to pay that ransom. And destroying the backup server and its database is an effective option, because if you lose that database, generally speaking, you lose the ability to recover, even if you have all of the backup data. There are, of course, other ways that you can lose a server, like physically losing the building, which can leave you scrambling for both a new location and new hardware to recover your data. Even worse, and probably most overlooked, is when law enforcement gets involved. If you lose access, you could actually lose access to your backup server because it's been decided that that box is part of a investigation, and it's now part of a chain of evidence. So the point is that as part of your disaster recovery plans, you need to think about that as one of your active scenarios, so that no matter what happens to the server itself, you can still recover from backups and you can still recover your data. Now, I mentioned earlier a couple times that companies struggle for visibility into their backup environments. And in my opinion, you can never have enough visibility. And I'm not talking just about malware detection, right, which is where we tend to talk about visibility the most, but I'm talking about visibility into what's happening in the backup infrastructure. One of the ways that bad actors are destroying data is by making subtle changes to the backup environment, so that the data loss isn't found until you're in the middle of a recovery, you're in the middle of an investigation on an attack. Having analytics that allow you to see what changes are in your environment can make sure that doesn't happen. And it's easy to take this for granted because we think about cyber attacks as one large event, but in reality, it's a number of smaller, I would call them simple acts that cause us to be impacted. Here, let me give you an example. There are organizations out there that have been seen making changes to the backup jobs, right? So that the job runs correctly, but the data isn't valid. You're essentially backing up garbage, right? It's the same amount of data so that nothing looks different. The attacker is actually counting on you to only be looking at things like audit logs to make sure that the job was completed, so you don't find out that the data is missing until it's too late. Being able to not only tell when a job was changed, but also know who made the changes and what data was affected can help you and your security team scope an attack and make sure that the damage is limited. Now, like I said, most companies rely on audit logs to determine if a backup was successful. They hope the data is available because they don't have time to test their DR plans, and most of them will admit that the process is too difficult and can't be done on a regular basis. This opens up significant room for error when we're talking about a cyber crisis. There's actually a study that was done by IDC that said most companies only test their disaster recovery plans once a year. And cyber criminals, quite frankly, are counting on you acting like most companies. I've always liked to say that hope is not a strategy, which is why you should be looking into the ability to automatically create and maintain those disaster recovery plans and use the plan itself as a baseline for regular and automated testing. Essentially, we're taking all of that grunt work out of the process to help you make sure that your backups work as expected, the data is there, and that you can recover all of your applications without surprises. I like examples, so let me give you another one. Most applications require you to recover them in a certain order. You've got the database, the middleware, right, the front end application, etc. If you recover those applications in the wrong order, you're going to spend more time troubleshooting that application than if you just did it right the first time. That slows down the overall recovery process. So being able to do things like make application groups, as we like to call them, allows you to recover applications in the right order so that they work the first time, and you can do it at scale so that you're eliminating a lot of those manual process. Now, that's a super simple example just because we're limited on time here, but the point is that it's another way that allows you to be part of that 19% of organizations that don't have to pay the ransom. Now, we've covered a lot in a short time, and this is only a sampling of what it takes to recover from a cyber attack. You're going to see a lot of other great information on options for recovering from an attack, but here's the big takeaway from this session. Recovering from ransomware is a messy process. And most organizations haven't designed their recovery plans to work at the scale of a ransomware incident. Following just a single approach or buying into what I call the buy my box or just do it my way mentality just doesn't work in the world of modern cyber threats. Every environment is different, and you need your disaster recovery plan and your processes to match your environment so that you can recover data. Put another way, what I'm saying is that you need to think about choice, right? Your DR plans need to help you choose your level of performance, right? Choose your level of protection and choose what's important to your business. The end result is allowing that business to have a greater chance of being part of that 19% of companies who don't pay the ransom. So I want to thank everybody for your time today. I'm going to hand it back over, and if there's anything we can do, don't hesitate to reach out.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. That was such an interesting presentation and an absolutely fantastic way to kick off our Super Summit today. I want to ask you one question before we let you go, and I know we're tight on time. But you mentioned at the top that there's a lot of noise in IT security, and I think you're right. So for anyone out there that is, we're just getting started on the day here today, so hopefully they're not overwhelmed yet. But if they've been feeling that effect of that noise, is there something that you could give them, sort of a first step or an action step or a thought that they can have in mind walking away from this presentation to kind of get started or maybe cut down a little bit on that noise?
The first thing that I always say is start by putting your capabilities into categories, right? Or put another way, put it into a box, right, of how you're thinking about it. And then think about how those pieces can fit together. Because there's actually an interesting statistic that I saw a couple of years ago that say that most organizations only use about 75% of the capabilities that are available to them, and they have overlapping products. So understanding the full capabilities of a solution and what they really are is going to help you simplify your security stack and at the end of the day, make yourself more secure.
I love that. That's such a great point, and certainly something that I think a lot of the folks out there can relate to. So follow up with Veeam if you want to get that insight and talk more about recovery. And again, Chris, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks again for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, I'm still kind of thinking about what Chris just said about the having overlapping capabilities and not utilizing them fully. And I think that's such an important thing. I'm sure a lot of you out there kind of went, oh, and maybe felt a little bit of that sense of, yeah, that rings a little true. So that's a really important takeaway. And I'm seeing some great high fives and thank yous from the audience out there today. And that's awesome, as I'm sure Chris is enjoying seeing these comments coming in as well. Again, we're going to keep everything rolling today, so we will switch our questions over to live chat and email follow-up, so stay tuned for some answers. I do want to point out that we have the what additional information would you like about the Veeam solution poll up on the screen for you right now. So again, this was a short, punchy presentation. We're just kind of scratching the surface of what's available with Veeam. So if you want some follow-up information, and I'm sure that you do, click on that poll right now and let Veeam know how they can follow up with you. What is the best way for them to get you that information? I'm also going to suggest that you head on over to the handouts tab, download the super fun Veeam infographic covering 2023 data protection trends. It is a really interesting read. I love infographics, always a fun thing to see kind of that data display in a little bit more of a digestible format. So go check it out. All right, and while you guys are clicking on the poll and downloading the handout, I am going to give away our very first prize. We're going to do a $300 Amazon gift card, and that is going to Dan Uribe of Wisconsin. Dan Uribe of Wisconsin. Congratulations, Dan. You have won a gift card. I'm going to keep reminding you throughout the day that you do need to be here live and present with us at the Super Summit today, and that we will be following up with all prize winners after we wrap, plus the best question card from each one of our sessions. So keep those questions coming in. Okay, but for now, we're going to keep things moving right along on this exciting Super Summit, because up next, we are so lucky we get to chat with Jeffrey Gardner, Practice Advisor, Detection and Response. Love those things at Rapid7. Love that thing too. All right, Jeffrey, thank you so much for being here with us on the Super Summit. I know you have some awesome content to cover, so I'm going to hand it right over to you. Take it away, Jeffrey.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Ransomware, Old Dog, New Tricks. We're all familiar with ransomware as a concept and the damage it can cause, but as with everything in security, the threat actors have evolved their techniques to get around traditional detection methods. We'll go through some of those techniques today and also discuss methods which can help detect these new threats. The agenda. So to start, I'll give you a brief overview of who I am and what I've done, go over the basics of the different ways ransomware operators have evolved over the years, and discuss some new tricks that have been seen in the areas of initial access, discovery, credential dumping, and command and control. Lastly, I'll tell you all about those detection methods which should help you reduce the risk of attackers succeeding. So a little bit about myself and why the heck you should care about what I'm saying. My name is Jeffrey Gardner, and I'm a practice advisor here at Rapid7. I started off back in the oldie times when I was 12 building tone generators with my cousin. This is back when payphones were still a thing. That quickly escalated into BBSs, IRC shenanigans, messing with AutoExec-BAT and config.sys, and MS-DOS 6.2, still the best DOS, and an 88-mile-per-hour trip to the future where some 20 years later I've ascended Olympus and AKA became a CISO. But I wanted to do more to help just the organization I belong to. Rapid7 came along, and here I am. I'm also a huge Star Wars and Marvel fan, and am a practicing tattoo artist in what little free time I have these days. Now, if you've ever seen any presentation or talk I've ever given, I always try and find a way and include a certain image somewhere in the slide deck. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's this. Because Neapolitan ice cream is one of my favorite flavors of ice cream. And strangely, or not so strangely, I also enjoy banana splits. But since we're here to talk about ransomware, let's get into the meat of the presentation. And as I go through this, I will do my best to give a definition wherever I mention a term that may not typically be a part of everyone's daily vocabulary. So it all started with extortion. One of the first ransomware attacks ever documented was called the PC Cyborg virus, released via floppy disk around 1989. Victim needed to send a check to PANA and to restore access to their systems, even though it was simple malware that used symmetric cryptography. And symmetric cryptography just means is a form of encryption where the same key that's used to encrypt the data is also used to decrypt it. Not content to rest on their laurels, ransomware operators evolved and added an additional type of attack, which became known as double extortion. In 2020, they evolved yet again and added another layer of attack, which was dubbed triple extortion. In 2021, brought the most current evolution of ransomware into the mix with 4 layers of attack, dubbed quadruple extortion. So what is single extortion? It's the granddaddy of ransomware attacks, which involves deploying the ransomware, then encrypting the files, and blocks access to files. The operators then demand payment from the affected organization in exchange for decrypting the files. The data the operators are trying to encrypt usually targeted critical data, as well as anything which could hinder business operations. So the solution to this most basic form of ransomware was rock solid, tested, and clean backups, which, as we all know, is easier said than done. Now, as systems became increasingly virtualized and the backup process became less onerous due to tapes being slowly phased out, ransomware operators decided they needed to up the stakes and came up with the double extortion scheme. So, the first ransomware family to use this technique was called Maze, and like traditional ransomware, it encrypted files, but it also added an additional capability, which was to exfiltrate data. Now, instead of simply demanding payment to decrypt your data, they also threaten you with the release of the information that they stole if you don't pay the ransom. The ransomware operators usually have dedicated sites where they leak the data, but they can also release the information in underground forums on the dark web and on blog sites. Now, ever the industrious bunch, ransomware operators yet again came up with another way to inflict additional pain on their victims. The triple extortion technique was pioneered by the operators of the Suncrypt and Ragnar Locker ransomware families, and it all starts with the encryption of your data. But it also, includes the threat of data theft. And not content with that, they also include the added threat of performing a denial of service attack or a distributed denial of service attack against the public-facing websites and resources of the target company. So a denial of service attack is an attack meant to shut down a website, resource system, or an entire network, thus making it inaccessible to its intended users. A distributed denial of service attack is a subcategory of the denial of service attack, in which the attacker uses, it's an issue of scale. So denial of service attack, attacker typically uses a single device to accomplish their goal. Distributed denial of service attacks, they utilize thousands or even millions of connected devices to force the target offline. And to give you an idea of the scale of this type of attack, the biggest DDoS attack to date took place September of 2017 against Google and reached 2.54 terabits per second. And 1 terabit is equivalent to 1.25 gigabytes per second. So the attack against Google reached 31.5 gigabytes of traffic per second, which is, as you can imagine, hard to defend against. Now, the latest evolution of ransomware tactics involves 4 different types of attacks. Our old friend data encryption starts us off, followed by data exfiltration and the threat of release. Also includes the threat of a denial of service or DDoS attack, but also involves spreading the joy of threatening the release of information to the target organization's customers, stakeholders, business partners, and the media. So not only will you be threatened with the release of information, if any partner information is discovered in your data, that organization will be contacted and threatened as well. Now, if what we just talked about wasn't enough to pique your interest, there's also been some new developments in how the ransomware itself is delivered and how it technically operates. So we'll start off with how operators gain initial access to deploy the ransomware. These deal with Toad, new ways to phish users, and also an increase in attacks against single-factor authentication. So what is Toad? Well, in this case, it isn't a character from the Mario Brothers video games. Toad, or telephone-oriented attack delivery, is a type of social engineering attack that lures potential victims to contact fraudulent call centers managed by the threat actors in attempts to steal credentials or install malware or ransomware onto their systems. These messages claim to originate from known companies like PayPal and include details of supposed bills or transaction fees for services. Recipients are then either instructed to call a specified number to claim a refund or view an attached invoice for more information, which may be sent as an attached PDF. The phone number in either the email or the PDF is used to initiate contact with a fake customer service helpline, which attempts to obtain account credentials and convince victims to download programs or provide remote access to their devices. The good news is that these sent emails contain numerous red flags, including unofficial sender email accounts, such as Gmail, vague account details, and plain formatting that lacks formal signature blocks. Another email-oriented attack vector is associated with the Quackbot ransomware family. It uses a compromised email account to respond to an email chain and deliver a message containing a OneNote attachment, either standalone or within a zip file, to avoid being detected or filtered by mail rules. Upon opening the attachment, users will be presented with a screen like the one you see here, prompting them to double-click the open button, executing a series of scripts which download and execute the ransomware payload. Lastly, for initial access, we've seen an uptick in attacks against VDI infrastructure, which only utilizes single-factor authentication, otherwise known as the standard username and password. These account details can either be obtained through past breaches, phishing emails, unchanged default passwords, the list goes on. This makes the attacker's job incredibly easy. Why try and exploit externally facing vulnerabilities or attempt drive-by downloads when you can simply log in and obtain control? Turning to discovery, we've seen some new ways to perform domain trust, user account, and session discovery. So for domain trust discovery, we've seen an uptick in the use of the Windows NL-test utility to discover domain trust relationships. Now, why discover domain trust relationships? Threat actors try and gather information on these trust relationships so they can move laterally in Windows multi-domain or forest environments. These domain trusts allow the users of the trusted domain to access resources in the trusting domain, which can then be used to perform attacks like pass the ticket and curb roasting. Pass the ticket is a credential theft technique that allows for the use of stolen curb roast tickets to authenticate to resources like systems and file shares. And curb roasting is an attack that abuses the curb roast protocol to harvest password hashes for Active Directory user accounts that have a service principal name set. And these are most often privileged service accounts. These hashes can then be transferred offline and cracked. QUser is another utility we've seen being used for discovery. This utility displays information about user sessions on a remote desktop session host server and can be used to find out if a specific user is logged on to a specific remote desktop session host server. Basically, the attacker will use the QUser command to get the session ID that they want to hijack and their own session name, and then utilize a different utility to hijack the RDP session. So with regards to credential dumping, we've seen usage of new techniques for credential dumping that don't involve ye old standby of Mimekats, and can also utilize lolbins, or living off the land binaries and scripts, also known as non-malicious local OS binaries and scripts. So the first example that you see here utilizes the built-in rundll32 command to call a specific function of a different DLL to dump the memory of the LSAS process. If you're not familiar with the LSAS process, it is the Local Security Authority Subsystem Service, say that 3 times fast, and is a process in Microsoft Windows operating systems which basically verifies users logging on to the system, handles password changes, and creates access tokens. Dumping the memory of this process allows an attacker to obtain encrypted passwords and curb roast tickets and either crack them or use utilities like psexec or WMI to move laterally in the network. Now, if the attacker has access to the GUI, it's even easier for them. All they have to do is open up Task Manager, right-click on the LSS process, and then click Create Dump File. And a similar technique to dump passwords, this time for the entire domain, involves using PowerShell to use the ntds utility to dump the ntds.dit file, which basically contains hashes for every account in the domain, as well as the system and security registry hives needed to crack those passwords offline with a different utility. Turning to command and control and our old friend Cobalt Strike, we've seen a depreciation in the use of this popular pen test tool and an increase in the usage of other tools and commercially available software. So instead of using Cobalt Strike, which is having more detections written for it every day, attackers are instead turning to things like Bishop Fox's Sliver, which is an open source cross-platform adversary emulation and red team framework, as well as commercially available remote access tools. Brute Ratel is another option similar to Cobalt Strike, as it is commercially available. And that enables operators to deploy agents called badgers that allow for lateral movement, privilege escalation, and to establish other avenues of persistence. Additionally, we're seeing increased usage of the System BC malware, which allows for remote access and administration of infected systems, including actions such as logging keystrokes, taking screenshots, and more. So how can we detect some of the things we were just talking about? In the essence of time, I won't be reading everything on these screens, but we'll be hitting the highlights. So for initial access, consider using things like UBA and geolocation to detect first-time login attempts from unusual IPs or locations that may not be standard, and utilize multi-factor authentication everywhere. You might think you can't afford it, but if you have access to Office 365, you too can utilize MFA. For discovery, baselining, and examining usage of the NL test, NET, QUser, NTDS util, and other lol bins in your environment can help you create detections which detect misuse. And lastly, in addition to baselining the aforementioned binaries, you should definitely monitor for the indicators shown at the bottom of the LSAS memory column. For System BC detection, I would highly suggest monitoring for unusual file executions in the program data, perf logs, users music, and users public locations folders. I'd also suggest monitoring for .xyz, .tech, and .cloud domain usage, especially if they're being called by non-browser related processes. Lastly, utilize threat intelligence. If you have the budget for it, there are a number of commercially available tools like our own Threat Command product, as well as open source alternatives like OpenCTI and MISP. The downside to the open source alternatives is they typically require a lot of resources to start up and to maintain. So it appears we have reached the end of our time together today. If you'd like to learn more about how Rapid7 can assist you with ransomware or any number of other threats you faced, the easiest way would be to send an email to sales@rapid7.com. And one of our fine account executives will reach out to you. Additionally, you can check out our blog to read all about the hot security topics, as well as follow us on Twitter, or check out our extensive library of YouTube videos, which also includes, shameless plug, a series like The Lost Bots, which is hosted by myself and my incredibly talented and hilarious colleague, Stephen Davis. Thank you all for joining. I hope you found this information useful. And I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, depending on where you're located. Take care.
Oh man, what a great presentation. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for some really good information as well as some solid Marvel references. We had some good discussion going in the question section. If you missed it, Brian was wondering what everybody's superpowers are. I went with flying. I know that sounds a little cliche, but I feel like it's kind of innocuous, I don't want like the Midas touch thing where you wish for a superpower and then find out that it's actually your downfall. So I feel like flying's just sort of, nice and safe, fun, good times for all, So I'm going with that. You guys think about your superpowers. Let me know. Ooh, teleportation. Good one, Foster. I like that. We could all be in Italy right now, sipping wine on a terrace as we talk about cybersecurity and ransomware. Doesn't that sound great? All right, well, moving right along. Oh, Eddie says mental telepathy. Ooh, I like that one too. I do want to point out that you can't telepathically answer this poll. How's that for a segue? So please do actually click on the poll that you see on your screen right now and let us know what additional information you would like to get about the Rapid7 solution. Ooh, omnipresence, excellent, super speed. Okay. You guys are really creative. I'm digging this. Time travel, also a good one. Great superpowers out there. This is healing. Okay, Logan Wolverine style. Yeah, Danny, I like it. Stopping time, Nicholas. Okay. Teleportation. Krista's with you on the teleportation. We're all teleporting someplace warm and sunshiny right now. Great. Well, we'll keep things moving, but keep those answers coming in. This is great. Good discussion there, Brian. Good start. And if you're looking for some more information right away on the superpowers you can get through Rapid7, head on over to the handouts tab and be sure to get the Rapid7 handout. It's a solution guide, the ransomware playbook. playbook, actions you can take to lower the risk and impact of this kind of attack. Such a great read, an incredible follow-up to everything that we just heard from Jeffrey. So please do go and check that out. Now, I am going to go ahead and give away a prize while you guys all continue to answer with your incredible superpowers. This is so good to see. I'm going to push these all out so you can see the answers coming in just a moment here. Okay, so first prize giveaway, and let's do two this time. We're going to do a $300 Amazon gift card, but we're also going to do a few of those Simply Safe outdoor security systems. How cool is that? So let's start with a $300 Amazon gift card. Now, before I get into this, I'll remind you one more time that you do need to be here, live and present at the Super Summit in order to win. Our very first winner of, well, this next conversation, but second winner overall of a $300 Amazon gift card is Jamie Sweet of Missouri. That's sweet, Jamie. Jamie Sweet of Missouri has won a $300 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. And the Simply Safe outdoor security systems are going to Jonathan Etheridge of Mississippi, Ed or Eddie Andreo of Kansas, Carrie Knight of Illinois, and Joseph Anderson of Michigan. I'm going to read those again. Getting a Simply Safe outdoor security system, Jonathan Etheridge of Mississippi, Ed or Eddie Andreo of Kansas, Carrie Knight of Illinois, and Joseph Anderson of Michigan. Congratulations, folks. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prizes after that we wrap. Now, don't forget, there's still lots of chances to win a prize left in our day today, plus the best question card from each session. So keep those coming in. All right, but for now, we're going to keep all you superheroes moving along in our conversations, because we have another fascinating expert, and I'm sure Shrija has not planned to tell us her superpower, but maybe we can figure it out as she speaks here. So we have another fascinating expert speaker here with us, Shrija Moharar, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Let's get Shrija on out here with us. All right. Well, Shrija, it's so great to see you again. Thank you so much for coming to join us here at the Super Summit.
Yeah. Hi, Jess. I'm so happy to be here.
We've got a lot to dig into, and today I get to play along too. I'm going to be your muscle. I'm going to be moving the slides, and you're going to be the brains of the operation. You're going to be telling us all the cool stuff that we have going on today. And I think you're going to jump right in. We're going to talk a little bit of protection, a little bit of recovery. That's the plan?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Love it. We'll take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Jess. So, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Today, we're here to discuss Rubrik and how we can secure your data and secure your business. So, as you might have seen in the news, there have been major ransomware attacks, and organizations like yourself invest in additional layers of security to prevent such events. But despite these layers of security that have been put into place, the bad guys are still getting through. So, what can we do from here? Next. This is where data security comes in. Data security combined with traditional infrastructure security can fully secure data assets and as such secure the business and defend it against cyber attacks. So we're going to focus on three main areas today. And these three pillars are what we really define the Rubrik Security Cloud as. So we have to think about this approach differently, right? The bad guys are getting smarter and smarter by the day, and average recovery times are 30 days plus, which is unacceptable in most organizations. So we have to think we have to keep the threat actors out, but we also have to think about recovery. How can we get everything back up online? So we'll jump into what you see on my screen here and what all of this means. But to quickly explain how we can ensure recovery, but do so in a quick amount of time and shorten that average recovery time of 30 plus days to hours or a few days. Rubrik solution secures your cloud wherever it lives across enterprise, cloud, or SaaS. Our solution is organized into three key pillars. So starting off with data resiliency, this will cyber-proof your data with air-gapped, immutable, access-controlled, redundant backups. Our second piece is our data observability piece. So this will allow you to continuously monitor your data for ransomware, remediate sensitive data exposure, and find IOCs, aka indicators of compromise. And our third piece is our data recovery. So this will allow you to surgically recover your apps, files, or users while avoiding malware reinfection. Next. So it all starts here. What this means is, can we guarantee that we can get that data back? How do we ensure recovery of that data that hasn't been touched so we can fully recover? So on our next slide, starting off with the top right-hand side of our data resilience piece. Once again, this is a crucial part of our solution. This is all built within our baseline solution. We have that logically air-gapped component. So we are physically connected to your network, but none of Rubrik's storage and your backups are discoverable by any NFS or SMB protocols. We also utilize our encryption everywhere. So once your data does touch Rubrik in flight and at rest, we'll be utilizing an AES 256-bit encryption, as well as all the internal communication between our 4-node 2U appliance will be encrypted as well, and any information going up to the cloud. And our third piece is immutability. So we're actually utilizing a proprietary file system, Atlas FS, which is append only. So no bad actors or admins can modify, encrypt, or delete any of your backups. And now going to the bottom left-hand side, we have our enterprise-grade role-based access control. So you can grant granular permissions to specified members of your IT organization. And now we enforce MFA, aka multi-factor authentication. We integrate with various different MFAs like Duo, Okta, anything that is SAML 2.0 compliant, as well as we allow for native time-based one-time passcodes for any local or AD users, just to ensure any login to your data environment is safe and secure. We also have a few other capabilities, but in the interest of time, I will move on. So next. But now additional questions have come up. So what's really going on with our data? What's happened and what needs to be recovered? So with our second pillar, our data observability piece, it all starts here. So how we determine the scope of that attack is really down to that file level. So we're utilizing various different machine learning models and AI capabilities to learn the behavior of your data environment over time. And then we can detect any mass deletions, mass additions, modifications, or encryptions of your data to detect what systems have been impacted and what needs to be recovered. So you can think of this as the blast radius of your attack. The next thing we need to figure out is what sensitive data has been impacted. So how do they know what the bad guys have? What are they going to potentially leak, etc.? We can also help proactively identify who has access to this data within your organization. And this can help you take action before the threat adversaries do on what they will with that sensitive information. And lastly, how do we identify those IOCs, aka indicators of compromise, to avoid reinfection? We'll actually find the last known good state, so we can bring that up, and you can fully secure and recover your data without reinfecting yourself. Next. The last piece is the recovery piece, obviously, right? So how to get everything back online. So we have a number of ways to do this to ensure safe and quick recovery of your data. So we can first quarantine that malware to make sure no one by accident or malice recovers that and risks reinfection. We can also surgically recover data in mass or at the granular level, so specific file or folder. And Rubrik can actually do something which we call our live mount capability. So you can spin up a VM utilizing Rubrik infrastructure as the data store, and you can reboot those systems and VMs with our infrastructure. You can also simply migrate those workloads over until production is fully stood up again, and then fail back over. We have also built what we call blueprints. So this is basically the workflow to bring your applications back online. You can think of it as boot order scripting. The database supporting the applications, databases, VMs, etc. All of this can be automated. So in peacetime, you can build these workflows out, and then in wartime, you can simply click a button to automate this process and, of course, make your life easier. Next. So all of these three pillars together that we just walked through make up our Rubrik Security Cloud solution. Again, this is about ensuring recovery and doing so in a meaningful way that is efficient time-wise and can make your life easier. So you can recover everything post-attack, and that's what Rubrik is here to do for you guys. so you can get back to your day-to-day work without having to worry about paying that ransom or worry about being out of operations. And you don't have to just trust my word for it. On the next slide, you can see a list of a variety of different customers who are utilizing Rubrik and the various different verticals we are present in. We have over 5,000 customers, and they are 100% protected. And we've never had a customer have to pay the ransom. So very proud of that fact. And not only can we ensure that your data is safe, but customers love Rubrik. They love us. So our CSAT rating right in the middle is actually 98.6%. So of course, not only are customers very satisfied with the level of support we can provide and the security we can provide, but you will get access to our support team, your account team, as well as our next slide, our ransomware response team. So let's say you were hit with the ransomware attack, everyone's worst nightmare. They will actually be by your side 24/7, 365 to ensure that you guys can recover and get back up and running. So we've actually had our ransomware response team present in over 400 ransomware attacks. And once again, none of our customers have had to pay the ransom. They've all fully recovered. And here's just a brag slide showcasing some of the industry validation that Rubrik has received. But thank you all so much for your time today. I hope this resonated, and please reach out if you need anything. Thank you.
All right. Well, Shrija, thank you so much. What an awesome presentation. I had so much fun moving the slides. I felt like I was part of the show today, which was great. And I think, you know, a lot of what you were covering with detection and response, obviously, these are really important parts of a ransomware preparedness strategy. And I'm wondering if you can give everyone out there with us today an idea if there's sort of one thing that you would want them to walk away either thinking about, asking themselves, understanding, you know, what would that be?
Yeah, great question, Jess. And, you know, ransomware attacks are a pertinent concern in today's world. So I would love for you guys to kind of marinate the information we went over today and ask yourself, is your solution really built to ensure your environment is safe and secure?
That's great. I love that. That's a perfect starting place. Marinate, everybody marinate on all the cool stuff we learned and we are learning today. I love that. And be really, you know, being honest about where you're at and what your needs are and having that awareness before you kind of take those action steps. Thank you so much, Shrija. That's great advice. And it's been so much fun chatting with you today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Jess. And, you know, if this solution resonated with you, please feel free to reach out to Rubrik. We'd love to, you know, chit chat.
Absolutely. And I can definitely attest it is a good time anytime you get to chat with the Rubrik crew. So please do follow up and reach out. Thanks again, Shrija.
Thank you so much, Jess.
Okay, and now we have a question for all of you. What additional information would you like to get about the Rubrik solution? So lots of great choices up on the screen for you there, data sheets, white papers, case studies, all of the above. Again, we're zipping through a lot of information very quickly here, and this is really layered, complicated, interesting stuff. So if you want to dig in a little bit further with any one of the experts that we're chatting with today, that's a great way to do it. Just click on the poll. I say this a lot, but it's like hitting the easy button. This is the info I want. Hand it to me, and then the teams will follow up with you. Again, we're going to keep the questions rolling in on live chat as well as email follow-up, so keep those coming. And I'm going to suggest that all of you head on over to the handouts tab. You can click into the Rubrik link. It's actually going to take you to their website where you can start exploring some of the really cool resources and upcoming events available on Rubrik.com. So spend some time exploring that after we wrap today. You can open that tab now and save that for later. Now, while you're clicking on the poll and opening that Rubrik tab, I am going to give away another prize. We have a $300 Amazon gift card. Now, I'll remind you again that you do need to be here live and present with us at the Super Summit. I feel like you guys can probably all say that along with me at home now. You're like mouthing mouthing the words with me live and present. But yes, you do need to be here. So $300 Amazon gift card today going to Garrett Workin of Oklahoma. Garrett Workin of Oklahoma. Working it, Garrett. Congratulations on your gift card. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap today. Now, don't forget, we still have more chances to win a cool prize, plus that best question card from each one of our sessions. But for now, let's keep zipping right along in our super summit because we have another super expert here with us. I crack myself up. Up next, I'm so excited to introduce you all to another awesome expert presenter in today's Super Summit. We are so lucky that we get to chat with this incredible human. Ashley Blanca is with us, Consulting Director at Palo Alto Networks. Now, Ashley, I know this is going to be such an interesting conversation. Let's bring you on out here with us. Just one moment. Hey, Ashley, thank you so much for being here with us today at the Super Summit. I am so excited to chat with you today.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks for having me.
I know you have a lot of cool content lined up for us, and we do not have a lot of time. So take it away. What's up in ransomware?
Right? Yeah. So absolutely. Let's jump right in. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Blanca, and I'm so happy to be here today to talk about ransomware preparedness and response. By way of introduction, I am a director from Unit 42 of Palo Alto Networks, where I lead incident response engagements, specifically from a reactive standpoint. So today, before we dive into this realm of the ransomware spectrum, talking about preparedness and response, I think it's important to set the stage and discuss sort of the degrees of impact when it comes to ransomware attacks. So as we dive right in here, you'll see at the top, there's a visual. There are a lot of steps that come before actual ransomware is deployed and then sort of lays impact on any given environment. So you'll see, from reconnaissance to delivery to exploitation of weaknesses in the environment to the installation of malware to progress the attack or move access forward, moving that needle. You then see persistence and lateral movement. But all of this comes before a threat actor is able to action their objectives, specifically deploy ransomware in an environment. But as a result of this, there are varying degrees of impact here. So all of which are tied to the intent, the capability, and the resources that a threat actor may have. And so you see listed here, systems, rendered inaccessible due to encryption. This is a given when it comes to ransomware. It's part of, the ransomware lifecycle that files and systems are being encrypted. Also, there may be a potential to degrade the integrity of data. And by this, I mean to the threat actor accessing sensitive information that a victim wants to keep close hold. That is basically tampering with data. And then the destruction of backups and hypervisor environments is a big and hot topic in the space of impact here. We're seeing definitely an uptick in attacks against hypervisor environments such as ESXi. And then multi-extortion efforts, which we'll dive to a bit further here. So as we still are approaching or within the ransomware lifecycle, we're looking at these multi-extortion techniques. So think when we move the target as practitioners and security folks, the threat actor, shifts their techniques as well. They are always trying to find new ways to get organizations to pay up. And there are multiple ways to do so that you see here. When an attacker wants to apply additional pressure, these are the methods that they're using. So in addition to encryption, where they're getting victims to pay, to basically regain access to their data, they then move forward with data theft. We've seen this, right? Data leaking on websites and just leaking all of the information that they may have taken when they were in the environment. But in addition to those two elements, now they're introducing denial of service attacks, where these basically it's rendering the victim's websites unusable. And then they're also, reaching out to not only customers and business partners and even media in some instances, but also actual employees of these victim companies are being sort of either given a method of enticement to assist threat actors, or they're just using it as an extortion technique. And one that is not listed here is potential for investor backlash. So back in 2021, the FBI actually did issue a warning, that if victims do not pay a ransomware quick enough, ransomware actors may in fact threaten to disclose the information publicly, causing potential investor backlash, because obviously no one wants to be involved in a ransomware attack or a large-scale ransomware attack. So now that we sort of have an understanding of the full impact that a threat actor can force upon a victim when it comes to ransomware, we start to ask ourselves, how can we better position our security posture, not only to thwart these potential attacks, but withstand incidents like these? Because yes, your plan should also assume that you're going to be impacted one day. Don't be a sitting duck. Your job is to sort of lessen the blow and make sure they don't get anything good, basically, but to really lock tight things in your environment. So with that, as we move into preparedness and thinking about that plan, I've sort of broken things out into two parts: pre and post incident preparation and response. So here you'll see to the left on the non-technical side, a list of items that you would sort of look into for preparation, and a side on the right for technical items. From a non-technical perspective, you're seeing cyber insurance here. So a lot of people come into an incident, or clients come into an incident with not really understanding that there is sort of a fallback here. There is insurances available and options available here. So having that packed into your plan for preparation is important, and it is a viable option. Then there is having a comprehensive and ever-evolving incident response plan. And by that, I mean, it should encompass everything that you can stuff into it, and constantly evolving in that you're practicing it. You're making it work into your fiscal planning every year. Because as I said before, it's not if, it's when, and you want to make sure that your plan works well if something comes up. And then third-party vendor management. Having access to different vendors, whether it's outside counsel or IR firms, or firms that are going to look at your systems 24/7. Having that in focus is really important to be prepared from a non-technical perspective. And then training, both from an employee perspective, where train your folks not to basically accept certain things by way of email or authentication prompts, but also educating your upper management to understand what's involved in these types of incidents. And then from a technical perspective, it's sort of maybe the given for most, but the proactive assessments, the tabletops, having a good handle on your asset inventory is key. In addition to data preservation, both two key things that come into play with response, which I'll get into in a moment. And then having an AV, an antivirus, or an endpoint detection and response solution is absolutely a must in situations such as these, just because it's pretty much the only way to thwart and to contain at the same time. And then looking at authentication and policy controls. Authentication, meaning multi-factor authentication. Do you have that in your email environments? Do you have it on your access to systems remotely? And then policy controls, anything from firewall to policies within the environment. You'll want to make sure that those are built in as well. So as we dig into the actual plan, some of these considerations you'll see are not really standard, but given that I'm in this lens, or have this lens of reactive, these are the things that I think, or that we do come across very often, that are subject to sort of scrutiny or focus during an incident response matter related to ransomware. The first of these is, number one, chain of command. You want to absolutely, ahead of time, identify your stakeholders, the ones that are going to make those business decisions. Can we shut down? Can we afford to shut down the whole network to remedy this incident? And are we in a position to pay and negotiate with a threat actor? Can we do that? And giving that go ahead. Many times having these key personality stakeholders recognized and identified ahead of time will speed up the process for response when that comes. And then also determining who is leading incident response efforts. Strategy, both from a strategy and project management perspective, you want to know who's going to be leading the charge during any given time. Number 2 is budget. You want to make sure that within your budget, in addition to all the other things that should be in there, 3 key things should be endpoint detection and response, as well as attack surface management solutions. Additionally, adding in vendors into your budget, understanding that outside counsel and cyber insurance is available options for incident response is key to getting you through these hard times and help navigating you through these hard times. In addition, incident response firms and forensic firms and firms that will help you with alert fatigue, if you have that, or looking and monitoring your environment or EDR solutions, and a PR firm. If it gets to that level, you also want to make sure that you have a grasp on communications. Again, training should fit in here as well. Number 3, as far as asset inventory, again, you really want to have a good grasp on identifying all of your assets, whether that's satellite, not basically in the office. It's maybe international. Given that we're all remote, bringing your own device, you want to make sure you know where all of these devices exist, because it absolutely will speed up the process for recovery, remediation, and an investigation should you go that route. And then you should have a grasp on, securing a management solution for these assets, both for patching and deployment of those patches, but also deployment of incident response tooling as well. And then having that IR strategy, the meat of that built into your plan. There's data preservation is really key in terms of incident response. And this is by way of logs and images and snapshots. It's really key to have that ready to go and upfront. And will support all restoration and recovery options. Within that same vein, you want to know, your resources and your limitations, if you have any, for people resources and storage limitations. Next up, we have the post-incident, non-technical and technical. Really, it's just as simple as acting on that plan, initiating that chain of command, using your outside resources that you've plugged into that plan that you've identified ahead of time, initiating your communication strategy, both internally and what you're going to tell your folks that you're working with, but also externally. If it gets to that point where you need notifications or you want to try to sort of thwart any mass hysteria, when it comes to this type of incident, what is your external communication strategy going to be? And then consideration to maintain privilege. If you are working with cyber insurance or outside counsel, maintaining privilege may be an option for you there. And then from a technical perspective, post-incident, looking at containment, restoration, and investigations is really important in terms of tying that into response elements. And we'll dig in quickly here to just basically highlight what incident response methodology looks like. From a Unit 42 perspective, I know it's a lot to read on this slide here, but I'll just take a few minutes to cover what does our process look like, or what does a typical incident response process look like for Unit 42. First, we're going to scope the incident. We're going to come in and we're going to talk about 30 minutes about what has transpired from a timeline perspective. What does your environment look like? And really just assessing and curating the options that we can use to get through this incident. Then next, you'll see these 2 elements of investigate and secure. They go hand in hand. So investigate, we're going to be concerned with that initial attack vector. We're going to be looking at, that overall impact and scope of what has transpired, while also collecting indicators of compromise. We'll filter that back into our process for investigation, both utilizing for determining a full timeline as well as securing your environment. And that just sort of feeds cyclically within. And then, within the secure stage here, basically the goal is to contain, eradicate, and recover. And that, after all that is said and done, with proper planning, you're getting through that super easy, with little qualms. You've got, steps ahead of you. You're going to move into that sort of report phase or closing out and lessons learned, getting that expert guidance, both from a breach coach perspective, perhaps with counsel or with your IR firm, and then you'll transform from there. And so given the limited amount of time, I think that's all we can cover today. But that's what I've got for us, Jess.
That's a lot, Ashley. You crammed a lot in there. And I want to say, I really love that you gave us this sort of walkthrough, and I don't want to say step-by-step plan necessarily, because obviously there's a lot of little steps in there, but that kind of high level planning process. But I'm wondering, for anyone out there, because I think a lot of times overwhelm is a big reason why or intimidation is sort of what can stop us before we even get started. So we have this arc and this flow that we should be thinking about when we're creating this plan. What is like 0.0? What is the first step to getting this whole thing started for somebody out there in the audience today?
Yeah, definitely. The two key takeaways that I would consider jotting down for this absolutely are to one, admit that, it's not if, it's when, but also to have, to plan and prepare for every stage, from assembling a team, engaging your vendors, to preparing for a full scale investigation. You want all of that in focus with your plan. And then the second takeaway is practice that plan on a regular basis and sprinkle in those, proactive assessments and tabletop exercises so that your team is used to, initiating and engaging in this type of plan that you set out for yourself.
I love that. That's a great note to end on and a great takeaway for everyone out there in the audience. Ashley, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been so much fun chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, and we've got that poll up for you again. What additional information would you like to get about the Palo Alto solution? So lots of great info covered very briefly there, and lots more to learn. So take a minute now, click on the poll, and let Palo Alto know how they can follow up with you, what information you would like to see. And I'm seeing some awesome high fives coming in from the crew out there. Douglas, Dave, Jeffrey, I agree. That was a very educational, and I see the word excellent. I love that. Yes, that was an excellent conversation. Ashley, thank you so much for that. And I'll remind you all that we're moving the conversation over to live chat and email follow-up. So keep those questions coming in because we will make sure that you get answers to them. You can also click on the poll. That's another great way to get some answers. And you can head on over to the handouts tab and snag the 2023 Unit 42 Ransomware and Extortion Report covering the latest multi-extortion trends and insights to keep your organization protected. So a couple of you were asking about that extortion trend, and this is a great way to get some of those answers. So grab that handout from the handout section that's under the Palo Alto link, and you'll find that Unit 42 Ransomware and Extortion Report for 2023. All right, so while you're doing that, I am going to give away some prizes. And up next, we have a $300 Amazon gift card and some Apple HomePods. So I'll remind you all, again, say it with me. You do need to be live here, present at the Super Summit in order to qualify to win. And our very next winner of a $300 Amazon gift card today is Ala Raka Shake of Illinois. Great name, Ala Raka Shake of Illinois. Congratulations, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. Our 3 HomePods going to, three HomePods going to Tom Kiley of Massachusetts, Andrew Rossetti of Maryland, and Joe Kodali of Texas. Again, that's Tom Kiley of Massachusetts, Andrew Rossetti of Maryland, and Joe Kodali of Texas. Congratulations to all of our wonderful winners here today. Ala Raka on your $300 Amazon gift card. Tom, Andrew, and Joe on your Apple HomePods. We'll be following up with all of our winners after we wrap, as well as those best question ask cards. So keep those questions coming in. But for now, we're going to keep moving things right along on this super summit. And I'm so excited that I get to introduce not one, but two fascinating experts from Metallic, a Commvault venture. Steve Preston, VP Metallic Security, and Brad Kirby, Senior Director of Product Management, are here with us today from Metallic. So Steve and Brad, we are all so excited to hear from you folks. So without any further ado, I'll hand the platform right on over to you. Take it away.
Pleasure to be on today's Metallic webinar with you. My name is Zach Brigman, product marketer here at Metallic, and I will be your host for today's session. Today's webinar, really exciting topic and a pertinent one as we really focus on data protection and its increasingly important role in cyber response and how early warning and being more proactive can help you better safeguard your data and respond to emerging threats. Wanted to introduce my co-host and speaker for today, Steve Preston. So Steve joins us. He is the VP of Metallic Security Services. Steve spent a lifetime in the security space. Very happy to have him on speaking about cyber and how it relates to data protection. So with that being said, let's hop on in here today, starting the conversation around really the current state of affairs as the lines between data protection and data security are really blurring. With new cyber threats emerging, with new imperatives around how we protect our data from these threats, amidst the background of really shrinking IT resources. It's challenging IT to keep up, and it's really evident by how folks are thinking about protecting their data. We had done a proprietary research study at the end of 2022 with IT directors and above to say, hey, what keeps you up at night as it relates to protecting your data? Recovering post-attack is still a critical focal point of data protection. What we're seeing enter the fray is those two statistics on the left-hand side, preventing data damage and avoiding data loss. So recovery alone in these current landscapes is not enough. IT administrators, directors, folks really who are looking after data are looking in equal parts to prevent damage and avoid loss in addition to recoverability. But the big challenge is, what tools do I have in my toolbox to be able to detect and properly respond adequately to these threats across all environments? Roughly 1 in 10 IT administrators and above believe, yep, we have the adequate tools that span equally across my data estate and across my environments. And the criticality there is if I have one weak link in one environment, one workload, right, it could potentially pose a risk in what we see and how we respond. Steve, any thoughts on that?
Ransomware is really difficult to detect. There are several reasons. We're going to cover them during this presentation, but the one I want to call out here is the ransomware encryption algorithms themselves. Believe it or not, it used to be true that ransomware, once data was encrypted, it was very noisy, but it may be too late by that point. Even that has changed a lot. So I'm going to introduce you perhaps to a relatively new technique called intermittent encryption. And what that means is that the ransomware associates have figured out that you really don't have to encrypt the whole file to render it useless to a victim. That has some really interesting effects. Number one, it doesn't change the file structure very much. So any kind of detection or anomaly detection capability that looks at the file structure may not pick up this sort of technique or this encryption algorithm. The other bit of this is that encrypting only part of the file makes the encryption method really fast. So in some cases, 10 times faster than what we've seen in the past. So, the bottom line is today, if you get hit, you've got to think about data getting encrypted at, alarming rate, nearly 19 terabytes a day. So depending on what you look at in terms of median dwell times, in other words, how long the attacker is in your environment before they get detected, you're looking at somewhere in the range of 90 to 330 terabytes that you'll have to recover by the end of the attack.
And Steve, you bring up a good point, right? Because sophistication is growing in this space, and you touched upon encryption, right, and the rate in which you encrypt or how bad actors could encrypt. What's doubly concerning is that that's not the only vector of attack, right? Double and triple extortion tactics are on the rise. Bad actors aren't just looking to encrypt your data. If I can steal your data, if I could take it out of the system, if I could leak it, how many times have we seen a negative impact of a breach where sensitive files have been leaked on the dark web, right? If I could destroy backups altogether. The real goal here of a bad actor is how can I inflict as much pain and use data, right, unfortunately, as a way to monetize that pain. So it is amongst shifting landscapes, and I think you've had great sound bites on previous forums where it's not necessarily a linear path, right? Where it's like, okay, now I do this, and then I do that, and then I do this as my third step. Bad actors look to get at as much as they can and inflict as much pain as they can in a short amount of period of time, and a lot of times that revolves around these multiple different tactics. That doesn't just involve holding your data hostage. A lot of times it involves doing other things that recovery alone can't respond to. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I was guilty of this in the past too, where I would think of ransomware as a transaction, largely like bot oriented or malware oriented, and a transaction where an actor would encrypt my data and then hold it ransom and ask for a payment. And either I pay it or I wouldn't get it back, right? And if I paid it, I'd get it back maybe. And that's where, recovery, backup and recovery would save the day, right? That's no longer the case. So that's assumption number one, that we've got to kind of throw that out, because that's dated thinking. The other one is that, well, I'm not going to be attacked by a nation state. I sell, we make ice cream. Why would a nation state worry about ice cream? It's not going to be an advanced attack. Ransomware as a service has made advanced techniques available to everybody. It's sort of, democratized, if you will, APTs, advanced persistent threats. So these advanced techniques are offered as a service. So someone who wants to make money at ransomware doesn't have to be an expert at, penetrating a perimeter or moving laterally. They'll just buy it as a service. So since it's an advanced attack, you should assume that if you're hit, that just like an advanced attack, your attacker has complete control over the network. There are about 60 groups now worldwide that feature extortion tactics in their attack playbook. And like I said, that's becoming the norm, and it's actually more accessible than ever.
Yeah, Stephen, and you mentioned that barrier to entry being lowered, right? As we think about ransomware as a service being as readily available as other developer toolkits, right? And it's kind of a scary notion. It's part of the reason why you've seen this rapid evolution of ransomware and the stakes, unfortunately raised. It's important when we look at data protection as, through the lens of some of these challenges. And we've traditionally thought around data protection as being conventionally my last line of defense. It really neglects kind of this critical avenue, this blind spot within data protection where we can be more proactive and kind of bridge the gap into being on our front foot as opposed to our back when it comes to how we respond to threats.
The bottom line is you better have your backup infrastructure together, right? Number one. So orchestration, workflows, automation, you have to be sure you're not recovering infected data. You have to protect your control plane. Impact means that the attacker is going to disable your ability to recover. So you have to protect your ability to recover, and you need automation to make sure that you can recover 200 terabytes as efficiently as possible. The only way you can influence that blast radius, the amount of data that's affected by impact, is to look into the production environment. And that's the window of opportunity where you can potentially see an attack and contain it before you have to recover the data. So this 4-hour timeline between the time an attacker will get into the perimeter and impact is actually completion of the ransomware campaign is 4 hours. We've just seen recent ones where it's even less than that, 3.5 hours. So your real window is kind of about 90 minutes of time when the attacker is in the network and starting to do reconnaissance and figure out what's what. Now, a lot of us think, okay, security has this covered. You've got probably some kind of endpoint protection. You're collecting logs of SIM, and you're collecting data on what's happening in your network. But attackers are innovative, and they're using techniques that these conventional tools can't see. They call it living off the land. They're probably using tools that if you're in IT, you use. Things like PowerShell or PS exec and so on and so forth. They're using legal tools. They're probably getting into the network, again, using ransomware as a service. They'll probably use a connection broker, and they're very likely going to get in the network as an admin and use legal tools, utilities during the business day. It just makes it very, very difficult for the conventional security tools to pick up this kind of activity. So this is where this idea of deception comes in. What if not everything in your environment was real? So this is the idea of a honeypot. The challenge has been historically is that honeypots are they've been kind of complex in the past. You'd have to be an analyst. You'd have to be kind of crafty. You'd have to build it. You have to manage the risk that comes with putting a fake asset in your environment that's vulnerable. That's honeypots. What modern deception technology has done is taken this idea and made it easy and really scalable. So yes, is a honeypot deception? Yes, it is. Is deception a honeypot? No, not really. It's based on the same concepts, but it's a modern, lightweight, secure way of putting fake assets in the path of an actor that they spend time engaging with. So this technology, deception, is the only technology I would propose on the planet that actually buys you time. It wastes an attacker's time and buys you time, because when an attacker is interacting with a fake file server, they're not actually, interacting with a real file server. So this is the basis of what we've done with ThreatWise. We've taken this kind of concept, and where in the past, we go into an environment where everything is real, right? There's no risk to the attacker. They go into the environment and they learn. If they get caught and they get kicked out, no worries, no harm. They'll get back in, they'll learn some more. And eventually, they'll get a foothold in the network. They'll figure out how not to be seen, and they'll get to the crown jewels. What our customers do is they put these fake assets in their path. And what's interesting is the technology is so lightweight and easy that they've taken advantage of that, and they put a lot of them in the path. So they play the numbers game to their advantage. So how do you make an alert on a fake file server, for example, relevant to the data that you're protecting? And this is where this idea of data-minded cyber deception comes in. It's very, very powerful, right? So you're doing two things at once. You're hiding your core assets, including your backup infrastructure, right? You're hiding that in a crowd, and you're providing an early warning. And that early warning is not just triggered to your SOC, your Security Operations Center, but that early warning goes to your backup administrators so they can take action on their backup environment to maybe take their backups offline or run their playbook to make sure that they're ready and that they can recover their data more safely and more quickly.
Yeah, Steve, thank you. And you mentioned data-minded deception. Metallic is Commvault's branch of SaaS-delivered data protection solutions. Commvault's been an industry leader in the space for 2 decades plus. For as many times as Gartner has published Magic Quadrant, we've been a leader. So really strong chops in data protection. If you look at the portfolio of what Metallic offers, we provide hybrid cloud data protection for VMs and containers, structured data, unstructured data. We're one of the only vendors, if not the only vendor, to protect environments like OCI and Azure PaaS as folks look to expand their footprint into the cloud. We also offer secure cloud storage and compliance for unstructured data, protect major SaaS applications, Office 365, Dynamics, and Salesforce, as well as laptops and desktops with our backup for endpoints. And the beauty here is it's all in the cloud. We provide this through a single pane of glass. So if you're protecting multiple of these workloads in unison, you can standardize SLAs, drive retention, recoverability, compliance across the board here. And it's all really built upon a zero trust, hardened, robust architecture. Notably, Metallic is the only SaaS data protection vendor in the space to achieve FedRAMP high status, meeting 421 security controls that are mandated by the US government. So if you are an agency and you have really sensitive data in a high impact level and you have a specific need for a FedRAMP High solution, we can support you there as well. So we're really focused on delivering this platform, having it be robust, durable, highly scalable in the cloud with this best-in-class security wrapped around it to prevent tampering, to prevent compromise, and ensure that your utility in the cloud, whether that be backing up or recovering data, is trusted and proven to perform. The real goal here, right, we really focused on this left-hand bucket here today in terms of early warning and detection and what you can do in production environments to be more intelligent around how I'm protecting my data and how I'm responding to threats, but it also spans across the entire life cycle. So we do offer capabilities, as I mentioned, with advanced insights to understand the risks in data sets as you pull them into the backup environment, and then the utilities to be able to recover. Metallic is looking at this as a full spectrum standpoint, and Commvault really believes in end-to-end protection, giving you the controls across the board to make sure data is secure, make sure it's compliant, to reduce the downtime and impact when it comes to recovery, and do it well.
So with that being said, I just want to thank everyone for attending today's session. For more information or to get your hands on a free trial, go ahead and check out metallic.io. A lot of great resources out there as well. Everyone have a great rest of the day. Thanks.
Oh, well, thank you guys. That was such an interesting conversation. I was seeing a lot of responses coming in from the folks out there in the audience to both of you, Steve and Brad. And I think the ideas have really resonated and struck a chord with the folks out there, which is great to see. Now, a really wonderful way to make sure that you get some follow-ups, make sure that you can continue this conversation with Metallic, again, a Commvault venture, is by clicking on the poll. So just let Metallic know what information you would like to dig into, what would be most helpful for you wherever you're at in this research journey that we're all on together today. So take a minute now and click on that poll. Again, we're going to move our conversation over to live chat and email follow-up, so keep those questions coming in. I will also suggest that you head on over to the handouts tab and download the Metallic link, Early Warning Meets Data Protection, 3 tips to reduce the need for ransomware recoveries. This is such a cool read. Lots of really great information, some really good tips. Be sure to download that and check that out this afternoon after we wrap. I'm really thinking a lot about speed. That was kind of the big takeaway for me. I don't know if you folks are seeing that as well, that a lot of the trends right now seem to be the biggest threat is the speed at which these threat actors are able to kind of get in, get out, and do what they need to do. And so that response time really being important. So this is a really, it's a neat conversation. And like I said, I think once we sort of feel like we got a handle on part of the threat, and then something else kind of evolves or develops, and that's why we keep having these conversations. That's what we said right at the top, right? Just because we're talking about this all the time doesn't mean we understand it and it's a static box and we can shut that box and check that box and know that we've done it. We have to constantly reevaluate as the threats evolve. We need to be evolving as well. So that was a really cool conversation. I'm glad we got to have that together. And I hope that you all have clicked on the poll, gotten that handout, because we're going to move things along. We've got a prize giveaway up next. So we are going to do a $300 Amazon gift card. And again, a reminder that you do need to be here and present with us live at the Super Summit. The next $300 Amazon gift card is going to Biswanath Datta of California. Biswanath Datta of California. Congratulations to you, Biswanath. As always, we'll be in touch about claiming prizes after we wrap. Now, don't forget, we've still got another chance to win a couple of prizes coming up, plus that best question card from each session. So keep those questions coming in. But you know what that means? I don't know how this has happened already, because there's so much great information. I've been having so much fun. I feel like in some ways we just got started, and in other ways my brain is already at full capacity. But luckily we're gonna have dessert to this incredible meal of information we've had, because here we are at our very last presentation in today's Super Summit. And the good news is we are definitely ending with a bang. To bring us on home today, we will be hearing from Andrew Silva, Technical Marketing Manager at Zerto, a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise company. Now, Andrew, I know you have some really exciting information lined up to bring us on home today, our grand finale. We're so glad to have you here. I can't wait to dive into this last presentation of our day. So I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away, Andrew.
Hi, I hope everybody's having a good day. My name is Andrew Silva. I'm a technical marketing manager here with Zerto. Today I'm going to be walking you through ransomware recovery architectures leveraging the Zerto technology. But before we take a look at those architectures, let's take a quick look at the anatomy of a ransomware attack to really see where recovery comes into play and how Zerto can help organizations with their ransomware resilience strategy. So we've all either heard or faced the havoc of a ransomware attack and the impact that it can have on businesses and organizations. So an attack typically starts with initial access, often gained through phishing, other social engineering tactics, and once inside the network, the attacker uses various strategies such as privilege escalation, lateral movement, and defense evasion to ultimately gain control and encrypt the victim's files and demand a ransom payment in exchange for the decryption keys. So also, to increase the chances of success, they can also exfiltrate the data as well and really extort that to increase the chance of payment. So as you can see here through this kind of anatomy, you can see a ransomware attack is a complex and multi-stage process. It not only requires a comprehensive defense strategy, but a robust recovery strategy as well to help mitigate risk. So let's look at the anatomy of a Ryuk attack. Let's look at a specific variant. So Ryuk is typically deployed through phishing emails, just like we saw in the first anatomy. Ryuk attacks are highly sophisticated and often involve multiple stages, including reconnaissance, lateral movement, privilege escalation, and all of these things happen extremely quickly, even the encryption. And now we're left with recovery. And as we see here from the Mandiant M-Trends report, median dwell times are now only 5 days. So once ransomware hits, the biggest factor that can determine the total impact of ransomware is your recovery. So when we're talking about total ransomware impact to the organization, we're looking at the last good recovery point prior to encryption, plus how much time it takes to recover that data for the organization to access. And this is really where Zerto can bring a lot of value and help reduce risk and save money. So leveraging Zerto's continuous data protection technology, if we have an encryption event, and we're looking at an event based off of a lockbit, 150 gigs of data, based off of an encryption rate of 615 gigs per hour, which is how quickly lockbit can encrypt. So let's just say an encryption event happens and it's 15 minutes for the data to get encrypted. We're able to go back in the journal 10 seconds prior to that event, and with our integrated orchestration and automation capabilities, we're able to restore that data extremely fast. And we're able to take those two numbers, right? The total time of encryption and recovery point plus the time to restore, and get our total ransomware impact of 25 minutes. So this is really where Zerto can drive value when we compare this to other recovery techniques that are in the market today. We can greatly reduce that risk and help save money from that perspective. So how do we do this? Zerto is based off of a foundation of continuous data protection, and this is block level replication, near synchronous replication, leveraging synchronous and asynchronous approaches. And because we sit at the hypervisor level, it's a fully software solution and it's totally independent of the underlying hardware infrastructure. And this is one of the reasons why Zerto works so well. Because of that, we can go between hypervisors, clouds, and different platforms, and we give you the flexibility of choice when it comes to setting a resiliency strategy for your business. And Zerto works effortlessly in the background without impacting production. And since it's continuous, right, it's completely hands-off. You don't have to adjust backup windows, tweak schedules, manage snapshots, manage a bunch of agents being deployed. You simply set it up, apply your SLA, and it's always on to keep you always protected. And another thing that makes Zerto so powerful is we've solved the challenge for recovering complex applications. So we're able to protect your workloads and applications as a cohesive logical entity. So this really helps avoid inconsistent recovery of large multi-VM applications where each VM is restored in a different point. So this is really one of the powerful things with Zerto is when we're creating recovery points, all of the VMs that are going to be in these groups, these are virtual protection groups, share the same validated checkpoint with write order fidelity across all of them. And it doesn't matter which hosts or data stores are being used, it's able to maintain that. So when that application is recovery, every VM that makes up that app spins up at that same cross VM recovery point, and these can come up as a whole entity in the specific boot order you want without any extra work on your part. You just set it up and then you're able to recover it in that specified manner. And this really allows you to protect and recover extremely complex multi-VM applications is a single unit at the exact same point in time. It saves a ton of time and resources when we're trying to reduce the amount of time dedicated to recovery, and it's one of the big, powerful capabilities with Zerto. And so part of what makes Zerto CDP so powerful is the journal and how granular we're able to get with that journal. So whenever we're talking about CDP, we hear a lot of terms in the marketplace about continuous data protection, but just being able to capture a write or an IO doesn't mean you have true CDP. It has to be paired with a very robust journal and other technologies and softwares, right? So Zerto can track every single change made to the application or server, and it logs it as checkpoints every 5 to 10 seconds. That's the average. So even if we have hundreds or thousands of servers, this journal can store these changed blocks and changed data for an hour up to 30 days. And really, when it comes to granularity, there's nothing else that can get this granular. So whenever you need to restore, you simply rewind back to an old checkpoint and easily recover from that, or I guess to that point in time. So in this example we see here, this is slightly different than the total ransomware impact, but this just gives you an example. If we had an instantaneous encryption event where encryption keys were revoked at 10 o'clock, we're able to roll back 5 seconds prior to that and get access to a state where our data is. We can restore that to a test environment. We can restore that back to production, but we're able to recover, minimize, and neutralize that threat by getting access to our data extremely quickly. And that's the power of the Zerto journal. So part of reducing that impact of a ransomware event is the recovery time. So Zerto has simplified recovery, right? We have a built-in orchestration and automation engine. It's not a separate product on top. It's integrated with Zerto. We've thought about this from the very beginning. So with Zerto, you simply select the applications or servers that you want to recover. In this case, we're going to do a test failover where we have an Exchange application that's made up of a total of 4 VMs and a VPG. We're then able to go select the point in time we want to recover to. We're able to select the site and start a failover test, and it's that easy. So let's go ahead and dive in to some of these ransomware recovery architectures with Zerto. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the architecture of Zerto, what we're going to be looking, this is a very basic architecture here. It's a single site, local replication, and a immutable data repository. So we have our Zerto Virtual Manager. That's our management plane that's paired to the vCenter. It gives us our inventory. We have our VRAs. You can think of those as our data movers. We have our journal, which stores all of the tracked changes. And then we have a copy of the journal that we can then use to put to a repository. So those repositories, again, whenever we're talking about a immutable repository, we can store those in a variety of different locations, Amazon S3, Azure Blob, and S3 compatible storage devices. And we're leveraging that object lock capability to ensure that that data can no longer be modified. So if we know we have a good point in time and things are running good, we're going to go ahead and take a replica and store that. It's just the best practice, right? Think about as many copies of data as it makes sense to have for your organization from a financial standpoint is good. The more the better. It's like having security controls. The more controls and more layers you have, the more protected you can be. So in this scenario, right, this could easily be ransomware. It could also just be corrupted files, but we have an event where we're unable to access a file system or a share. All the files are encrypted. So in this scenario, what we're simply going to do is we're going to go back, leveraging the journal, do a file level recovery in place to restore those files back to that VM with zero production impact, totally transparent to the end user. And we're able to really mitigate and neutralize that threat of ransomware in that environment. So this next architecture we're going to go through, it's going to be a multi-site architecture. So in this architecture, we're looking at multiple VMs, but rather than just doing local replication, we have remote replication happening as well. So this is really highlighting that one-to-many capabilities. So we have copies of data locally, but then we also have them remote. So if we do have an application failover need to take place, we're able to just simply restore that application to that secondary DR site. And so in this scenario, we utilize that live failover. And again, utilizing the orchestration and automation capabilities can really reduce the recovery time, and that journal really gives us that granular RPO of seconds. So in this scenario and architecture, it's going to be a full site infection. So this architecture is a little bit more complex, but it really highlights the capabilities of Zerto. So we talked about in that last architecture, the one-to-many. And this example, we actually have 3 targets. We have a local target, we have a DR target, and we have a cloud target. So that VRA is replicating the data all to both the DR and the cloud site. And the cloud site doesn't use a VRA, it uses a ZCA, which really combines both of those management and data movement functionality that you see in both the production and DR sites. One thing that's unique about Zerto is we automatically do the data conversions, right? So you don't have to worry about converting the data into the specific cloud format, whether that's an Azure virtual machine or for Azure or AWS. It doesn't matter. We do that conversion automatically for you. So in this case, we have a multi-site infection, right? So we have an impacting event that causes production and DR to both go down and be inaccessible due to a ransomware event. In this case, we're able to just simply leverage the journal through the Zerto Cloud Appliance and restore that journal prior to that impacting event and restore that environment back to an accessible state for the organization to do more due diligence or to completely recover if there's just something critical that needs to be done. And in regards to accessing that data. So in this scenario, right, we're able to do a live failover, right? So again, you do a live failover, you can do a test failover, and you can program your runbook. So all of these failover capabilities, or all these failovers are fully automated and orchestrated, and really can reduce the total impact that ransomware can have on your organization. So one of the last things that I didn't hit on was this can also do a reverse replication. So after you fail over, once you restore those other sites, you can do reverse replication back and then fail back over to your production sites as well. So it's extremely flexible. So last couple things. If you have any other questions or you want to learn more, go to zerto.com. We have hands-on labs. We have more ransomware recovery videos, and we have just a lot more information to your disposal. I really appreciate your time today, and have a good one. Take care.
Well, same to you, my friend. What a wonderful presentation. And I'm going to agree. Jay wrote in and said, agree, that was definitely dessert. And I would have to second that. The dessert on this incredible buffet of information was definitely worth the wait. Great presentation, Andrew. Thank you for that. You can see that I've put that poll up for you all. We would love to get your feedback on what additional resources you would like to explore from Zerto. So again, this feedback is extremely valuable, and it helps the Zerto team know exactly how they should follow up with you. So if you're feeling like there's been a lot of information today, which there has, and you're not sure you're going to remember it all, which you won't, the best way to make sure that you can recall all of this is to click on that poll and let Zerto, and hopefully you've been doing this with all our vendors today, is getting the information in follow-up. So make sure you click on that poll right now and let Zerto know how they can reach out to you. I'm also going to suggest that you head on over to the handouts tab and download the data sheet, manage and mitigate the high cost of ransomware. Get ransomware ready with Zerto. This is such a great read and a perfect way to follow up on everything we just heard from Andrew. So make sure you've got that downloaded so you can check that out after we wrap today. Oh, I love that. I just saw a comment from Sean saying, great presentation. Also a great product. He's been using it for years now. I love that. Thank you for sharing that shout out there, Sean. All right, well, while you guys are clicking on the poll, I'm going to give away another prize. Now, I'm going to split this one. I have two prizes to give away. I'm going to start by giving away a $300 Amazon gift card. Then I'm going to bring back out the one and only Lindsay K to give us a couple of final thoughts here. And then I will give away some Acer gaming laptops. So this is some ongoing gratification here. We're really making, oh man, I'm belaboring this metaphor, but we're really making a meal out of this wrap up here, the end to our buffet here. All right, so you do need to be here and present with us at the Super Summit in order to win. Our very last winner, a $300 Amazon gift card today, is Rebecca Kelly of Missouri. Rebecca Kelly of Missouri, congratulations on your gift card. Now let's take a quick pause here in the prize giveaway milieu extravaganza shebang, and we're gonna bring Lindsay back on out to chat with us for just a moment. She's got some final thoughts, so I asked her to stick around. Lindsay, let's get you out here with me. All right. Well, Lindsay, this has been one heck of a day. Thank you so much for coming back to hang out with us again. And I'm thinking a little bit about some folks out there in the audience right now that might be feeling like this has been so much and their brain is just swimming with cool ideas and things to do and ways to get started. And that could also potentially be a little overwhelming. And I'm wondering if you can help folks out there who might be thinking, okay, great, taking notes furiously, but what do I do? What is my next step on leaving the Super Summit here today? And do you have any thoughts for the folks out there who are maybe feeling a bit lost in information overload?
Sure thing. So I can't tell you, for every organization, we must start with this kind of particular thing. So there is kind of no one size fits all, and we're all in kind of different areas in our sort of maturity process with how far we've gone. So one thing I want you to take away is that you can definitely chunk this out, because right now it might just seem super overwhelming. There's so many different things. And the idea isn't to go from 0 to 100. It's to get, a good understanding of exactly where you are. For example, if you say, okay, well, kind of the next major thing that I need to tackle is backup, that's a step. But then now you kind of can focus on tackling that. If it's something as simple as implementing some of those basic cybersecurity hygiene practices, things like that to focus on. So I guess if you take one thing away from this, it's have a good understanding of where you are, do something. And if the next kind of something seems this huge, overwhelming task, try to break it up as much as you can. Because doing, even a little bit or even kind of making some progress towards a goal is way better than doing nothing at all. So I hope you can take that away.
That is a fantastic piece of advice, and that is a fantastic way to wrap things up. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thanks for being here with us today and for coming back and for summing that up so well. It's been so much fun chatting with you today.
Thank you so much.
I have to agree with Tim, who just wrote in and said, my brain hurts. My brain also hurts, Tim. That was a lot. But I think, as Lindsay said, it's so important to just keep taking steps forward. There's all kinds of great, what popped into my head was that story with the guy who broke his leg on Everest, and he was just picking spots like 20 feet ahead of him at a time as he crawled off the bottom of the mountain. And he would just look 20 feet down the line and he would say, okay, I'm just going to get there and then I'm going to stop. And then he would crawl there and then he would, get to that spot and he'd say, okay, I'm going to pick a new rock and say, I'm just going to crawl to that rock. And then I'm going to stop. And sometimes I feel like, this can feel overwhelming and a lot, and there's no stopping and there's no slowing. In fact, the opposite, it's just going to keep picking up pace. So instead, we're just going to keep picking a spot and getting there, and then picking another spot and getting there. Well, speaking of awesome spots, let's pause here and give away a grand prize, which is going to be, we've got 4 actually Acer gaming laptops that we're going to give away now. So these are going to go to Joey Meneses of Ohio, Connor Burge of Texas, Paul Sherrill of Washington, and Amir Toliat of Texas. I'm going to read that again. Joey Meneses, I don't know why I can't say that one, Meneses of Ohio, Connor Burge of Texas, Paul Sherrill of Washington, and Amir Toliat of Texas. Now, I promised I would read the entire list, and I will. Let's do it. Gift card going to Dan Uribe of Wisconsin. Gift card going to Jamie Sweet of Missouri. Security system going to Jonathan Etheridge of Mississippi. Security system going to Ed or Eddie. You registered as both, so we've got both. Andreo of Kansas. Security system going to Carrie Knight of Illinois and to Joseph Anderson of Michigan. A gift card going to Garrett Workin of Oklahoma. A gift card going to Ala Raka Sheikh of Illinois. A HomePod going to Tom Kiley of Massachusetts. Andrew Rossetti of Maryland. Joe Kadali of Texas. And then a gift card going to Biswanath Datta of California, and a gift card going to Rebecca Kelly of Missouri. And then the final 4 laptops, Acer gaming laptops, going to Joey Meneses of Ohio, Connor Burge of Texas, Paul Sherrill of Washington, and Amir Toliat of Texas. We will be following up with all winners after we wrap, as well as the best question gift card in each one of the sessions. So we will be reviewing all the questions asked in every session and following up with those winners. So stay tuned for that. Now, I do want to take a quick moment here to encourage all of you, if you're looking for a great way to follow up on the conversations we've had today, which have been, again, a lot, you should head on over to ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to understand, how to prevent, how to recover. So visit ransomware.org right now and start getting those resources together to help you take action on all the exciting things that we learned today. All right, now if you are here at the Super Summit today and you're thinking to yourself, this looks like fun, I could do this. I agree, it is fun and you can do it. All you need to do is shoot a message to connect@actualtechmedia.com and let us know that you would be interested in coming to present at an EcoCast, a MegaCast, a summit, a Super Summit, an expert series, whatever you have in mind, we've got it. So come have a conversation with myself, with David, with Scott, with Keith. We would all love to chat with you. So be sure to send us an email and come hang out with us. Well, with that, my friends, here we are at the very end of our Super Summit. And on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank all of our speakers from Veeam, Rapid7, Rubrik, Palo Alto Networks, Metallica, Commvault Venture, and Zerto for making this incredible Super Summit possible. On that note, I want to give an extra special, almost a super thank you to all of you for attending, for asking some great questions, for discussing our superpowers if we were going to have them, some incredible superpower ideas out there. I had not thought of some of those, so I'm going to spend some time. Not only will I be thinking about ransomware this afternoon, I will be evaluating my priorities and choice of superhero power. Let's all check back in on this in a couple of months. We'll meet back up at another summit and we'll see if anyone wants to add to that list. But in the meantime, I hope that you're all taking away some great ideas and ways that you can, start thinking about how you consider, how you approach, how you enhance your ransomware preparedness strategies at your organization. There's a lot here, a lot to dig into, and we're so happy to be a part of that conversation with you all today. Now, before you take off, speaking of important conversations, make sure that you've marked your calendars and come back and join me tomorrow, Thursday, March 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We are going to be talking about wrangling the cloud, avoiding missteps and improving application environments. So wrangling the cloud, avoiding missteps and improving application environments is happening tomorrow, Thursday, March 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. These are all really important conversations to be having, especially, why reinvent the wheel? If other people have made the mistakes, let's not make the same mistakes. So avoid those existing mistakes, and how can we then enhance and roll forward from there. So I hope I will get to chat with you all at the MegaCast again tomorrow. I want to thank you once again for joining me here today. And until I see you next, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.